Good day, fellow Canadians. I'm producing a short show here for other Canadians. I want to talk about what's going on with these trade tariffs and stuff. So this is a show basically for Canadians. But if there's Americans out there listening, or other people from other countries, United Kingdom or other countries, that's fine. You're welcome here. But I'm just going to basically talk about what's actually happening here with all this. This has come out of nowhere, really. This is very new. All of this tariff stuff, it's just basically for Canadians, just like out of the blue. I mean, for like forever, as long as I've been alive, America and Canada have been best friends. But suddenly this situation has come along, and make no mistake about it, uh, if your motive is to destroy a country from the inside, uh, using means of destroying the economy, if that's your motive, to destroy the economy, completely and utterly destroy the economy of a country in order to take it over, if that's the motive, and I'm starting to think more and more that that's what the actual motive behind all this is. They did an interview with Trump, New York Times, and they asked him point blank, will you rule out uh, uh, using direct military force on Canada? Now that's a yes-no question. So they asked him a question, will you rule out using military force on Canada? Maybe they didn't word it exactly like that, but that was the question. And Trump said, economic force. He didn't answer the question. He said, we'll use economic force. He didn't say will, but I think he just said economic force. In other words, I'm going to use economic force. But he never answered the actual question of, will you use military force? He just said economic force. That's not a no. A lot of people make the assumption immediately then, well, he's going to use economic force, he won't use military force. He never said that. He just said economic force. Yeah, maybe that's just plan A. you know? I mean, let's get serious here. I'm starting to think his entire motive, and he's actually said it. He said, I want Canada as a 51st state, and economic force is what he said he would plan on using. Well, by gosh, it's hitting the economy hard here in Canada, and I'm going to tell you exactly what it's like. It's like Canada's caught in a trap. Have you ever seen barbed wire? If you take it off the roll and you make a big bundle of barbed wire, they often use that in war, a big bundle of barbed wire laying on the ground. It's kind of like a fly trap. A person can get caught up in something like that. Say you're a hunter, you're going through the woods or whatever, and you stumble into a big pile of barbed wire that's hidden in the brush. Suddenly you're all tangled up in it. It's happened before, trust me. It's happened a lot of times in the world. People got caught up in a big pile of barbed wire, maybe in the woods or something, The worst thing you can do, and the gut reaction is to struggle as hard as you can, get out of it. But you're going to rip yourself to shreds if you try to struggle to get out. Same way with quicksand. If you're caught in a trap of quicksand, and the harder you struggle, the quicker you sink. But that's the first reaction. That's the gut reaction. When you're punched in the face, the gut reaction is to throw a punch back. But in this case, what we're dealing with is the most powerful military force on the planet. Okay, I'm going to tell you guys what. Back about years before the invasion of Ukraine by Russia, I think it was several years before, like 3 years before, 4 years before, it was a long time before, and it was unthinkable that Russia would invade Ukraine. And I went on here and I did a show and I said that Russia would invade Ukraine. I said it directly, and I showed the direction they would come in from and everything, right? With arrows and everything, and I went through the whole. And man, I took a lot of ridicule for that show. People said, "Oh, Russia will never invade. Oh, it'll never happen." And they come on and they said, "I'm leaving the channel. You're full of baloney," and they said all kinds of things about how that would not ever happen, ever happen. I'm telling you right now, I see this setup as a very similar situation. Uh, Except there's exceptions. The United States is more powerful military than Russia. Ukraine had a more powerful military than Canada did, with more people. They had, I think it was at the start of the war, they had something like 40 or 50 million people, and there's only 30 million people in Canada. Okay? Uh, and you know, the United States has got way more than 10 times as many people as Canada does. Probably more like 20 times as many people. And the military is probably 20 times as powerful. Whereas the Russian military was probably about 4 times more powerful than the military of Ukraine. But I saw this coming years ahead of time. I saw it moving in that direction. Make no doubt about it, fellow Canadians. Do not sugarcoat any of this. It's all pointing toward one thing. That the big impetus behind this whole situation is America wants Canada. And there's a number of strategic reasons why America, it's almost a must-have. Because America is setting up for war. Canada is the high ground. Canada is what stands between Russia and America. It's like in that middle ground. Just to the north of Canada is Russia. And we're right in the middle between the two superpowers. And it's the high ground. And it's also the most powerful trade route is opening up in northern Canada that the world has ever seen. It's like a 7,500-mile trade route. And the trade route they're using now is like 12,500 miles. It knocks like 6,000 miles off of when you need a trade or you need to move a ship. But it also knocks about that much miles off if you've got a warship that needs to get over there fast. Canada has control over that. America wants control over that. Greenland has control over that. America wants control over that. Can you see it? And also the shipping canal in Panama is a secondary trade route. Can't you see what America wants? They want these trade routes. They want total control over the trade routes, over the new trade routes that are being established. And they deem that a matter of national security. And they've already said it's a national security issue. When it comes to national security, nothing stands in their way. So Canada should take this very seriously. This is not, I mean, when we first were confronted with this, we were almost like a joke. Is this a joke? No, sadly to say, I do not think this is a joke. I think Donald Trump, over the next 4 years, plans on making Canada part of America. Well, he said the 51st state. Something to take very seriously. So it's like being caught in barbed wire. Why I got this article up here is you can see that you're playing into his hands. Every time you make a move to a escalatory move, he's going to more than match it and possibly double it. So it says here, Trump doubles planned tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum. Based on Ontario's Canada placing a 25% tariff on electricity coming into the United States, I have instructed my Secretary of Commerce to add an additional 25% tariff. He needs an excuse to do these things, or the American people are not going to accept him being duplicitous with Canada unless he can convince them that there's a good reason. So, the drug trade across the border from Canada. He's been preaching that, and the American people are like, okay, that's a good reason to crack down. He's got to keep that momentum going. So what's next? Is it Doug Ford cutting electricity off to Americans and 1.4 million Americans being in the dark, creating an emergency situation that can give him the next impetus to say, look at what Canada did to us. We need to do something back. Playing into his hand. Because he has all the strength. He's got all the cards. So, like I say, the first gut reaction is, you get punched in the face, the first gut reaction is to punch back. But if you're a 90-pound weakling and you're punching a 890-pound gorilla, he's not even going to feel it. But when he punches you back, you're going to more than feel it. So this is why I say this is a terrible trap Canada is in right now. How do we get out of this trap? It's a difficult one. It's a very difficult one. I don't have all the answers. But I do know that Dr. Phil used to say, people would come in and they'd have a big problem, and they'd tell Dr. Phil what the problem is. And one of the things he'd say to them is, because he'd ask them, what have you been doing about this problem? And they'd tell him. And then he'd say to him, well, how's that working for you? How's it working for you? You know, it's one of the things that Dr. Phil used to use to try to explain to them is, this is one of the things that we do, is if something isn't working, we'll keep doing it over and over and over again, trying to make it work when it ain't going to fit or it ain't going to work. We try to hammer it in there and make it work. You know, the problem with this is you can see how that's going to go over because he's holding the cards. So if you try to hammer something in to make something to get out of this situation, it's just tighten it up tighter. So what is the way out of all this? Maybe backstepping or figuring out how to get more trade with the European Union or trade with other people or trying to move and not attack, not go on the attack. In fact, maybe step back a few of the attacks, but just kind of make them superfluous. That's the and if you can hold out for the next 4 years, Canada will stay Canada. If you can make the United States superfluous, in other words, you don't need them, I think that might be a good strategy. Find other trading partners. Now, what I'm saying right now is what you need to do if you really want to not let this happen. The real way to fight back is not to fight back directly in tit for tat, get involved in this tit for tat, but to find a different angle. The other angle is to work to find new people out there who are going to support Canada or help support Canada, and Canada help support them through trading treaties and alliances and so on, to the point where it makes up the difference. Is that a possibility? Well, the EU is Canada's second biggest trading partner, and they have 150 billion a year. America's 750 billion a year. Can you get that 150 up to where it's somewhere maybe in between, maybe 450, and then when America pulls out, and you can't rely on them. See, this is the problem: is if you got a trading partner, you need to rely upon them. And this is a big black mark right there. Can we rely upon America? It's creating a huge question mark now at this point. A tremendous amount of damage has been done to the relationship. And being as we're joined at the hip, it's not a good thing. It's like co-joined twins, you know. I mean, That's happened, and that's been a tragedy. It's happened over and over again. It's happened a number of times. Co-joined twins, two people that are joined together at the hip. One of them's died. And generally, the other person, if they can't separate them, the other person generally dies too within a very short period in time. And this is not a good situation because we share along this border. And see, there's another thing that Americans could do if this thing were to escalate out of control. What do I mean by out of control? I mean out of control. You get stuff happening like, say, Doug Ford were to cut the electricity for 1.4 million Americans. I would consider the situation out of control at that point in time. If American households are going dark, you know. So what could the Americans do if the situation gets out of control? Americans could do even more. They could start shutting down their border stations between the two countries. They got somewhat of 100 border stations, more or less, across this wide border expanse between Canada and America. They were to start shutting down those stations, then it'd be a much more increased traffic to the stations that are still open. And then what if they started shutting those down? What if they shut them all down? Just barred them. Nothing gets in or out. Nothing, not even trucks. This has been done before. This is a military tactic. It's called a siege. And you can only siege a country if they're getting most of their supplies, the bulk of their supplies, from the person that's sieging them. You can set up a siege around them and stop off those supplies making their way in. You know what I mean? And the thing is how much stuff comes through all those 100 different border gates in from America into Canada. Now, if they were to close them, America would be self-sufficient. They receive enough food and everything else, medicine, and everything else from these other countries, and it doesn't come in through that border gate. Yes, it would probably hurt because all Canadian goods would be stopped. But they don't underestimate how far this thing could go, because why I say not to underestimate how far this thing could go is because a few weeks ago this thing didn't even exist, and here it is. We're facing it, and now we're talking about this other stuff that they might do, or they could do. It's a possibility that they could do, because situation A didn't exist a few weeks ago, and now we got situation A, so we're just looking ahead to what B could be. What could B be? In other words, this thing advances. Ultimately, let's not sugarcoat it. The United States wants Canada by all means necessary, and they're going to try to obtain Canada. And I'm thinking, in my mind, because wouldn't answer that question, will America? When the New York Times asked him, will America invade Canada with military force? And he said, economic force? That's not answering the question. And I say to myself, why did he divert from answering the question? Because it was just a simple yes or no. And that makes me very suspicious. Thank you guys for listening. You guys have a great day, and we'll catch you later. Bye-bye.